As we approach the end of July, we are saying farewell to Ursula's Return. The store set championships are wrapping up. We've had a number of Disney Lorcana challenge events happen, with Emerald Steel Discard, I think, taking the first one. But then Ruby Amethyst took the most recent two, including the one this past weekend on July 21st, which was in Fort Worth, going up against Amber Steel Song of all decks, which, Ruby Amethyst and Amber Steel Song, two decks that people may have written off in this format. A classic set one matchup, right? Going back all the way to the first chapter. Very happy to see those decks still being relevant. And what you're seeing on screen here is two decks that I and many others quoted as being the best decks of the format. But if you watch my videos, you know I said, well, this is how it is right now. The metagame will continually evolve. People are very aggressive in testing. You're seeing the emergence of small groups now that, Pixelborn and stuff has gone away. So it's not as apparent what new techs, what adaptability cards that people have put into their decks. Like, for example, we saw during the CCS 10K show, the deck that Luca and Noimnot ended up playing, which was Ruby Amethyst, adapted the Maleficent 3 drops just for that little bit of extra on-curve draw power to help combat against the Emerald Steel decks, which are still a challenge for Ruby Amethyst to beat. And so while, in Fort Worth, I think almost 50% of the top cut was Emerald Steel, the deck just couldn't make it to the final again. And again, part of it is luck for sure. But after we saw Emerald Steel dominate and win the first Disney Lorcana challenge event for the set 4 metagame, we haven't really seen it do too much damage since then in big events. People have, I don't want to say solved the deck, but they know how to combat it, right? They've adapted their decks. You see Amber Steel Song, which is, again, a deck that you would have kind of written off of this format. I know people who played that deck and were like, I can't play this because there's so much Sapphire in the meta now to combat the Emerald Steel, and I just get completely blown out by Sapphire Ruby, the deck that I'm playing here, for example, which is usually going to be the case. But again, you've seen them adapt. The first place after Swiss in Fort Worth was an Amber Steel Song. They made it all the way to the finals and was very close to taking it themselves, which would have been very interesting to see. So I think that's just a testament to showing you that, these decks that have traditionally been good, that have very sound fundamentals, which Amber Steel Song does, Ruby Amethyst does. This goes back to, basic TCG 101s, right? Fundamental principles of deck building, of synergies with cards, of making cards adaptable into different situations, not pigeonholing a card into like, oh, this card is really, really powerful, but it's really only good in this one scenario, right? So for example, when you look at like the Beast OTK that people were all hyped up about at the start of set 3 with the Sheriff of Nottingham that came out. Yeah, it's an OTK potentially, but it's very specific and very niche. And if it gets disrupted a little bit, then you don't get the combo off and you likely just lose the game. Versus these decks that can play a little bit more of a versatile game plan. And so while Emerald Steel and Sapphire Ruby are still very strong decks, I think after the errata to Bucky, obviously, we will see Emerald Steel go down in popularity quite a bit. It looks like in set 5, we have a little bit more focus towards Emerald and Steel being paired together for the damage dealing abilities. Like there's a lot of cards in Emerald that say like if this is a damaged character, you get a nice effect. And so obviously that pairs very well with Steel. So we'll see what emerges with Emerald Steel, if that will be a competitive facet of the game. It looks like Amethyst is getting some nice cards, and there are some new Rush cards that are coming both in Amethyst and Ruby. So does that make Ruby Amethyst even stronger? Will we see any additional bans or erratas? Again, erratas are pretty rare from what I know in TCGs. You're much more likely to see a limit or ban on a card. Like with what they did to Bucky, I think they would have just been better off banning it. I don't understand why they would errata it really, but I guess they still want it to be around, and maybe that's a foreshadowing into they're not going to really do a ban or limit list. They're just going to errata cards. Maybe that's what they want to do, because they don't want people to feel like, well, I bought this card, it's my favorite character, it's my favorite iteration of this card, and I can't play it now because it's banned in official league play or something. I don't know, but if maybe we can do a separate video on this, but maybe something like Queen's Castle, because we've seen that really clutch up and basically take over matches and win matches for Ruby Amethyst. Without the Queen's Castle, I don't think Ruby Amethyst would be nearly as powerful as it is. And so all the focus was on Bucky this set and how annoying that deck was to play against. And while Ruby Amethyst isn't necessarily annoying to play against, at least I don't think so, it is very oppressive because, once they start getting to that 6-7 ink line, they just have a castle on board and you just can't really do anything. In the finals of the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Fort Worth, you saw that all it took for Ed to win the game on game 3 which he was on the draw for, he was able to swing tempo because he was able to drop a Sisu, clear out the opponent's board, which was I think 2 Ursulas. And again, the Amber Steel Song player was already kind of like behind in that, but like dropping that Sisu just solidified the match for Ed because he followed it up with Queen's Castles. And at that point, when you wipe your board either with a Be Prepared or an 8-drop Sisu, it's like you drop Queen's Castle, and every other deck that doesn't have a 7 strength rush character just cannot deal with the Queen's Castle. So you just know that thing is going to get you 2 to 4 to 6 to 8 lore over the next couple of turns. And especially at that point in the ink curve, Ruby Amethyst, they have a grip full of cards most likely, and they just have constant removal options. Madame Medusa, Be King Undisputed, Sisu, Maui's, Be Prepared, of course, and they're just going to protect that castle. And that's been the win condition for these decks, for Ruby Amethyst decks, more or less, when you see them play. It's quite interesting to see. That's why you've seen stuff like Hercules, the 7-3 rush character from set 4, being teched into decks like the Ruby Sapphire, which is what I'm playing here. Anyways, if we go to this matchup, you're going to see that the Emerald Steel player ends up getting both of us into top deck mode. And this is why Emerald Steel had to kind of go away, because this deck is just no fun to play against, honestly. And I think Ravensburger did the correct thing with just either banning or errata-ing Bucky. I think they could have just banned it, to be honest, but I understand why they may not want to ban cards, at least right now. Because you get into a situation where it's like, yeah, we're just top decking here, right? And at this point in the game, I feel more confident because I'm already at 7 ink, and therefore I can start dropping my big bomb threats. Like once I get to 8 ink, I can drop the Tamatoa, 9 ink is the Maleficent, and I can draw into ramp, I can draw into Inkables to get to that point. I have my Hiram on board now, and unless the opponent can really just Bruno it and hope to discard it, there's not much that they can do to stop my card draw, so I'm going to easily recover from all this discard, because if they're not able to shut down the game early, the Ruby Sapphire deck will just kind of just recover and just start removing everything that the opponent has. So here you can see I finally top deck an item after not top decking one for basically the whole match. It is a fishbone, so not ideal, but we're able to at least draw off of it, and now here it goes. With the complete cycle. I don't even care about the beast because I have my Hiram engine online. They again need a Bruno to get this Hiram off the field, or like a Zeus with the beast swinging into it, which wouldn't be ideal because it would shut off their beast. I've just been able to control the board state. They're at 10 lore, so not very close to closing out the game. I have a lot of wiggle room in order to come back here. And at the start of the game, if you were paying attention, I lost all of my 8-drop Sisus. I ended up, I think, I remember this, I developed your brain into 2 8-drop Sisus. So I had to take one and put one to the bottom, and I think I had one in my opening hand that I drew into off the mulligan. So I only play 3 in this deck, and I had all 3 at the start of the game. And if you were paying attention again, you saw me drop a 3-drop Sisu when I had 5 ink, and my plan was next turn, hopefully, I think I had 2 cards in hand. One was an Inkable, one was the 8-drop Sisu, and I was like, okay, if I have to discard, I discard the Inkable. Hopefully I can draw into an Inkable and shift 6 Sisu, and that would only have gotten rid of the Bucky, because I think they had a Robin Hood and a Jafar on board. But getting rid of the Bucky in and of itself would just help me stabilize the board state. The opponent does indeed get the Bruno off, though, on the Hiram here, and we just do a random discard. They end up hitting the Maui in my hand, so that means I keep the Hiram, which again is super strong. Also a critical point in this game, when they top decked the Flynn Rider, when they were going to be able to quest for 4, that was like, holy crap, that's an insane top deck for you, right? After you discarded my hand and we're both in top deck mode, but then I top decked the Brawl to out it. So that really saved me, because they could have easily closed the game out within like 2 turns if that thing survived. So you can see why this is like not a fun thing to play, right? Like you're just playing off the top of the deck. There's very little skill involved at this point, in my opinion. When you're both in top deck mode, it's like, well, whoever just draws better. There's very little decisions to be made. I guess you can say on the Emerald Steel player side, like, I mean, I guess on both player side at least, like leading up to being into top deck mode, like your decisions there matter. But again, it's like kind of neither here nor there, because you're going to constantly out each other's boards and you're just going to be in top deck mode. And this is one of the reasons why Sapphire Ruby was so popular, or was slated to be very popular, because it was one of the decks that really did, I don't want to say hard counter Emerald Steel, but did fairly well into it, because of these reasons here, right? Like once you get into the top deck mode, I play a number of cards like How Far I'll Go and stuff that allow me to replace the card but also continue to ramp. and I can still continue to try to build up to my threshold where I can start dropping these big threats, and then I have stronger top end than you. You might have Beasts and Robin Hood, but I have Medusas, Maleficent Dragons, Tamatoas, Mauis, things that will easily deal with your board while progressing my game state, and then you just can't slow me down from there, because the Tamatoa is a pseudo draw engine, recurring the Popsicles, right? Playing Popsicle as you see here, drawing a card for it, and then if I have the Hiram already on board, this is just one of the strongest packages in the game, right? Tamatoa, recur Popsicle, play Popsicle, quest with Hiram, draw 2. That's a draw 3 total, right? Because I draw with Popsicle, draw 2 with Hiram. Very, very strong stuff. And here you can see my opponent is just like, yep, can't really do anything now because every single card I play is just too weak. I can try to continue to quest and inch closer to 20, but I don't have anything to close the game out with. I can't really deal with your board, so you're just going to continue to go wider and wider. These Ursulas don't do anything either. They're going to opt to shut off my card draw by Zeusing and Babooming my Hiram here. But again, at this point, I don't think I really need Hiram. I have a grip full of cards, I believe, at this point, and I think my opponent, I think plays a Diablo or an Ursula Deceiver or something and looks at my hand later, and I have 3 Maleficent Dragons. So I was like, yeah, I was ready for whatever it was you were going to drop, whether it was a Beast, a Robin Hood, a Diablo, whatever. You were not questing anymore if I didn't want you to, kind of thing, right? And I think I had to be prepared that he ended up sniping out of my hand or something. But I ended up healing the Maui with the Popsicle because I think I had 4 damage on it. So this actually comes into play. Tamatoa, quest for 1, get it back, draw a card. And you can just see, once you get this game plan rolling of Ruby Sapphire, it's virtually unstoppable. We have yet another Hiram in hand, so the opponent wasted, I guess you could say, all those resources in order to out my one Hiram, thinking that they were going to shut down my draw engine, but they don't. We're going to be able to ice block one of the Ursulas, which means my Maui still doesn't get banished because I will go back to 4 damage, I think, or 3 damage or whatever, and I'll be able to ice block the second Ursula if they quest with it or exert it again. So this Maui is just going to get continual value. I can keep recurring the Popsicle, healing it with the Tamatoa, bringing back the Popsicle, and then just using the ice block to ice block down the opponent's cards, making it so that my Maui takes virtually no damage and can continually get healed. And then, yeah, I just consistently out their threats that become exerted. So you can just see all the crazy synergy that you get with Ruby Sapphire. And it's still a strong deck, don't get me wrong, but I just think against decks like Ruby Amethyst that can play a little bit more of a slower burn game and progressive game, this deck really does suffer. It's one of its toughest matchups for sure. We'll see what happens with Shimmering Skies, but at this point, yeah, you guys can just see the board state. There's nothing the opponent can do as the Emerald Steel player. And this is one of the reasons why my friend, who I'm playing against here, took the Ruby Sapphire deck to his store set champs, because he realized that, yeah, Sapphire Ruby really does dominate Emerald Steel, and we knew that deck was going to be popular. He took it, he went undefeated in Swiss, he got to the top 2 in top 8, so he really went the distance. Unfortunately, he did 2-0 a Ruby Amethyst player on his way, in his Swiss rounds. And I was like, wow, that's really good, man. You normally should lose to that. And he beat a Purple Steel aggro player too. So, 2 decks that give Sapphire Ruby some problems. But then he ended up bricking in the finals match against that same Ruby Amethyst player, and he lost 2-1, unfortunately. But I told him, I was like, man, that's a really good run. Again, this person is fairly new at TCG, so he shows that he's really skillful and smart, and he picks up on a lot of things. So I'm happy to hear that he had success. But the testing helps, guys. And if you're ever wondering about not really feeling like I can do well or something, it just takes practice, right? Be confident in your skills, be confident in what deck you like to play, because even though a deck might be the best deck of the format, air quotes, it might not be the best deck for you because of your playstyle. I personally have a hard time playing aggro decks. I'm playing an aggro deck and I'm trying to control the board. That's how bad it is, right? I'm a control player at heart, so I like to maintain, it's a Yu-Gi-Oh thing probably, but I like to control resources, I like to have options, I like to be able to make decisions, and again, I'm used to more complicated card games where there's a lot more interaction, right? Because Disney Lorcana, as we know, doesn't have any interaction during your opponent's turn, or very limited interaction right now. That might change over the future, but I do appreciate this game for its fairly well designed cards and game states for a game that is still fairly simple overall. I think they've done a remarkable job with this game, and it's probably why it's so popular, right? And I mean, it's a Disney IP too, so it has a lot of things going for it. But in the end, my opponent just ends up scooping there. Yeah, they see my hand with the Ursula Deceiver and realize it's over. But that's going to do it for this matchup, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below if you made it this far. Thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.